Hello, everybody, and welcome to Touchpoint with Commissioner Larry Johnson. I'm glad that you all are here. This is our last session before you officially start the summer, which is Memorial Day. And we got to understand, I want to acknowledge our veterans for the sacrifices, our armed services for the men and women who made sacrifices on why we celebrate Memorial Day. Is to honor the ones who have died in the line of duty. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart in District 3 in our county for the sacrifices that your family members have made to keep our country safe. Thank you so much. The other part is our civic duty, our senses. We need you all to help us to get this done. We are now at the point where we're trying to reach at least 60% before we leave May. We're at 57.6%. We can do it. We have about 11, 12 more days left. Let's do it. 10 minutes, 10 questions. This will allow us to get about $1.8 billion a year for the next 10 years. And you're going to hear about a program that could be impacted or have because of the population and what we're trying to do. This program is a program that could benefit from the census as they move forward. So here's this thing, just fill it out. Let people know about it. It's easy. We only get one time every 10 years to do this, but it's so crucial that we do this as we see folks, food insecurity, folks are looking for food, need help with their breakfast and lunch, the children, all of those things. Senior meals are impacted by the population that we turn into the federal government. That's how many meals that we receive, money for those meals. So please fill out the census, and it's very easy. mycensus.gov, you can go there, get this information, fill it out. And of course, we started early voting. Started this week. So please, it's going to go until the end, the first week in June. But now is the time. Don't wait till the last minute. If you've done your ballot and you didn't mail it, you can then take your secure ballot. This is just the application, but this is what you had to fill out to get the ballot. And take this ballot to your local early voting site and you put it in the box and your ballot, and you have your ballot in. Or of course, if you didn't, you want to go in person, of course, you got to practice social distance, but you need to vote. June 9th is the election day. So please make sure you have that information in and make it happen. Tonight, Touchpoint family, I'm joined with a young man who is part of a dynamic program called Men Stopping Violence. And he will describe the program and tell us what they're doing. And we're going to deal with a critical topic tonight. Domestic violence is on an all-time high. Of course, we're sheltering in place, so a lot of the reporting that you normally would, people that were reported, you're not going to those usual places. So a lot of things are happening, plus the stress of being at home, trying to get if you're unemployed, trying to make sure you feed your family, increase alcoholism, substance abuse, all of those things help to drive the domestic violence in our communities. And so Mr. Spencer Murray is a conflict transformation practitioner who specializes in work with men and boys as it relates to unhealthy ideas of masculinity, how these ideas contribute to violence towards self, women, and the community. As the prevention coordinator for Men Stopping Violence, Spencer educates the community about domestic violence, helps the community recognize abusive behaviors, and provides the community with information about safe ways to intervene in abusive behavior. He also works in the schools to educate men and boys about domestic and sexual violence. In addition to his work with Men Stopping Violence, he teaches transformational classes at the DeKalb County Jail that encourage men to live healthy and more meaningful lives. He's a former educator in Detroit Public Schools, where he taught at Paul Robeson Academy, an African Center School, and Academy of the Americas, a dual language immersion school. He attended Western Michigan University, where he received a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in educational leadership. He also obtained an advanced degree of teaching from Wayne State University, a very good university, great school. Spencer later received his Doctor of Ministry degree from the New York Theological Seminary. Man, I think some famous people went there. You with some heavyweights. I say that because I did a presentation at Abyssinian.
Okay.
With Pastor Butts, and
yeah.
I was leading the program there in Harlem, and I had a chance to be up there. at his church, and we did a program. He did his seminary work where he focused on conflict transformation. His doctoral work focused on systematic influence of patriarchy in our society. Sorry, I'm getting my words mixed up. It's late. And his tendency to oppress and perpetrate violence towards women. Based on his dissertation, Spencer published his first book, The Conspiracy of Silence, the Religious and the Patriarchal Roots of Violence Towards Women. So we're joined by, I'm gonna call him Pastor. I didn't know he was in the clergy, but it's amazing. I'm reading the bio, but I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're part of our program tonight. But tell us a little bit about Men Stopping Violence and what you do and how anyone who needs services can get the help that they need.
Yeah, so Men Stopping Violence has been around for 38 years, 38 years here. So based out of Decatur, Georgia, though we do work all over Georgia, do training all over the country. And so Men Stopping Violence is, what we do is educate people on domestic violence and help to engage the community and engage men in taking action to end domestic violence. And so most of our work has been in the intervention and prevention. So intervention, so when men or someone is referred to us from the courts, from probation, we teach the 24-week classes. We do some, for lower offenses in domestic violence, we do 1 week, one 3-hour session twice a month for those offenses. We also do prevention work. So my job as prevention coordinator is to go out into the community. So I engage faith communities, I engage schools, I engage people to take action against it. So we educate the community on domestic violence, what it is, what it isn't, and we really engage men to get involved. And so, you know, our purpose really is, as we engage men and hold them accountable, then we inspire them to go out and engage other men. So it's a rolling thing. So we can engage men, then they can engage other men. And we kind of put that into our program, even our 24-week program. And so, yeah, I go out, prevention, I go out anywhere and engage those communities. And so I'm in the process now of building partnerships with those communities, those faith communities, those schools, where we can do that work.
What drives you to this work? I mean, you could be doing so many things. I'm looking at your background, and what draws you to this work, and what do you hope to give people, or what people can get from your work?
I think that's a good question, and I thank you for the question, because it really helps me to get across to people what really inspired me originally. Mm-hmm. So I've been with MSV, Men Stopping Violence, for about 3.5 months now. Mm-hmm. But I've been in this work for a while. And you know, Commissioner, it started as a personal mission for me. And so that's the roots of my work. And so I looked at my challenges in relationships. And let me say this, I thank you for calling me a young man when you introduced me. Because I had some, you know, I'm old enough to have had some experiences now. And so my experiences in relationships and the challenges I've had in a relationship, and I'm always transparent when I talk about marriage and divorce and challenges in relationship. And I've always been a self-reflective kind of guy. And so I began by looking at my own way of being in relationships. And where I gathered some of the perceptions of women, or where women gather some of their perceptions of men, and how that affects relationships, and how those images affect relationships, and how we live out those relationships. And so one thing took me to another thing. As I began to study that, I began to study how images affect our perception. If you see an image, or if the image is presented by the media or anywhere, how does that affect our perceptions? And so I just kept going further with my personal work. And then once I got into the New York Theological Seminary, it had a chance to study conflict transformation, which means you go into the conflict, you look at the conflict, you look at the tension, and you you face it head on, and you transform the people that are in tension, whether that's communities, whether that's states, whether that's people, whether that's relationships, that you can rather than just conflict resolution, you fix something real quick. You really transform the people that are in conflict or in tension. And so that took me into looking at how religion, since I was in seminary school, how religion might affect perceptions that can affect how men and women see each other. And so my study took me deep into that. And so as I began doing that, and I came to Atlanta almost 9 years ago from Detroit, and I met MSV, Men Stopping Violence. I met some men there, and I kind of stayed engaged with them, volunteering and going to some of their events. And as I continued to grow in that, I met them. I met some of the people that work there now, and you know, lo and behold, miracle! I began working there 4 months ago. They asked me to come on as a coordinator. So, I mean, I could tell a long story, but that's making the story short. So it started with a personal investment in wanting to do this, because, and I'll say this one last thing before your next question, because most men, I think, they know of violence and they hear of domestic violence. I heard of domestic violence younger. We knew those things happen. And most men like me would say, hey, that has nothing to do with me. I'm not a violent man. That is not my issue. Either it's a woman's issue or either it's the perpetrator's issue. It's not mine. But as I expanded the definition of violence, then I looked at myself. And when you look at emotional or violence, when you look at psychological violence, when you look at abandonment, when you look at all these things that can be considered violent, I began to look at those, and my journey just continued from there. So it led me right to where I am right now.
Well, what causes a person to be violent in a relationship, or give me some traits, and then once you do the traits, talk about some of the ways you can deal with decreasing or eliminating the violent tendencies.
Yeah, I think a lot of things go into violence. Or for one, if you witness domestic violence in the home as you grew up, that is it. If you witness not just violence, but you witness the gender roles that maybe where one is superior, where the male is superior to female, if you witness that, if you those can be some of the roots. But if you don't have any coping skills, if you don't have a way to center yourself, you talked earlier about alcohol and those things like that, and also the way we're indoctrinated into manhood oftentimes. Right. When you everything you mentioned at the beginning can go into that, especially during this time of COVID-19. And so if you're indoctrinated into manhood, and you see that that the manhood that you've been indoctrinated calls for you to push down your emotions and not express what you feel and suppress what you feel, because if you show that when you're young, you're considered weak. It causes you to do all those things. And we know that when you push all those feelings down, as when I teach some of the guys in DeKalb County Jail, the thing is that that's going to come out somehow. And oftentimes it's going to come out, what you suppress will come out in an unhealthy way. And so with the alcohol, with drugs, and to deal with those things. And so I think learning how to express yourself or redefining that masculine in a way that's healthy, you know what I mean? So you can have ways to express yourself. And men have to talk to each other and support one another. That's one of the things we do that's built into our program. And so men often, again, are taught to isolate. We don't talk to one another. If we're dealing with something, we deal with it alone. If a man has a physical ailment or something, he might feel pain sometimes, and a man doesn't want to go to the hospital. He doesn't want to do that, and God forbid, by the time he goes, and that condition has almost got out of hand. And so we've also been taught to take pain and not say that we're hurt. And so all those things can go in, I think, to and can produce violence. And when you talk about COVID-19, and now you talk about men who don't have the normal outlets of watching sports or going out to maybe they had a situation, maybe they had a routine where they were going out with other guys to watch a game or something like that. When those normal outlets are cut off, and now you're quarantined at home all the time, is very important. So if you don't have those coping skills, if you don't have that, it's easy for you to exact your frustration or whatever you're feeling towards the ones you love the most. And so we find now that many women are at home living with their abuser, and oftentimes they cannot call because to call while their abuser is there maybe will put them in a more dangerous situation. So during this time of COVID-19, we see domestic violence going up 30 to 50%. 30 to 50%. Now we already know that 1 in 4 women will be a victim of physical domestic violence, and I make that point to say physical because domestic violence can be other things, but 1 in 4. And so now 30 to 50% increase. The arrest rates in one of the counties is going up by 40%. You know, and so and then in the cab, yeah, you know, in the cab, you know, and what you and with your support and what the Solicitor General is doing is to address that. You know, so it's just what you said, that this is a crucial situation. This is always crucial, certainly now, but more than people know.
Right. Wow. So is there community factors? We know about the individual factors. Is there community or environmental factors that lead a person to violence or to do domestic violence?
It really is. It really is environmental factors, societal factors, and that's one of our hallmarks that we do in our intervention program. That certainly it is the individual, like you mentioned. So we hold the individual accountable, but the individual also exists. Men also exist in a system sometimes that allows that to happen.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So if we're taught those things growing up, if as a young man we're taught certain roles and we're taught that men are better than women or men are superior to women, and that's by that can start even as a young man. You know, I watched a video earlier today in preparation for something else with little kids, and I'm sure you've heard about this thing. You know, if you show 2 kids, a doll, a female and a male, you know, hey, which one of these dolls, you know, these kids can be 5 years old, which one of these dolls takes care of the babies? They'll point out the female doll. Which one of these dolls cleans the home? They point out the female doll. Which one of these dolls goes and makes the money and works? They point to the male doll. So these things start early. These gender indoctrinations start early, and sometimes they're the root of that whole thing, and we grow up with these ideas. But back to your question, we live in a society too that reinforces those. And so when you talk about your primary community, your schools, as you see talking about the book, your schools, your churches, your institutions, the government, when you look at the global society, when you look at patriarchy, you know, and so all those things come together and influence each other. So the individual also exists in an environment that allows him to do that. You know, that you know what I mean, that makes it okay for him to do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know, like you know, when you say you know, if you when you look at what's going on around the country, when you look at guys who've been arrested, you know, celebrities arrested for, you know, for sexual violence, sexual assault, you know, there's a certain entitlement that has come with that. And so when you live in a society, you exist in a society that says you're entitled, then oftentimes you know what I'm saying? So we have to deal with the individual. But then MSV, as a social change organization, also has to deal with that.
Right. Wow. And last part of this is the spiritual.
Yes.
Touch on the spiritual part of as you deal with violence and domestic violence, how can you tap into the spiritual side to decrease violent tendencies, to bring the good out? And
Yeah,
sometimes you can reconcile a family, sometimes you can't
yeah.
pull it back together. But talk about the spiritual side of this.
For me, and I'll speak for myself. For the spiritual side, I believe that what you do to others, you do to yourself.
Mm.
And so that is a spiritual principle I live by.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about religious teaching, that that can, as you know, the interpretations of that can go many different ways. You have many
Wow.
different religions, many different denominations. But
Mm-hmm.
I will say this. Um, Whoever is interpreting for you, when you talk about religious, whether you're a Muslim, Christian, whoever is interpreting your doctrine, oftentimes that doctrine sometimes can help reinforce that entitlement. For instance, and I'll just give you this without getting into a theological debate with anybody. Um, I'll give you an example of Jimmy Carter, who left the Southern Baptist Convention years ago. One of the reasons he left the Southern Baptist Convention was the way they were treating women, and they were using doctrine to do that.
Mm.
So if there's a certain scripture that says, hey, if a woman has anything to ask in church or anything spiritual, she should ask her husband. She should not say anything in church. She should ask her husband. So you get into you get into many things where there's still denominations, still religious practices where women can't be is not a pastor. Women can't be on the podium. Some of those things are in our scriptural texts, and they're interpreted something that was 2,000 years ago, they interpret it now. And so if it's interpreted in a sense where a woman can't speak in church, a woman has lesser value than a man, if those things are taught, then that is the beginning of an indoctrination that you can believe.
Wow.
So when you talk about the environment and you talk about these institutions, that's one of them. And then, then it's reinforced by school and, then the playground, the kids go out and play, all these things. So it exists in our society, institutions, and all the way up to the global outlook.
I got you. Last question before we close it out is, what are some of the resources? Give us some other resources. We've heard about what you offer. Are there other resources available to help victims who are going through domestic violence?
Sure. And I'm going to send you this tomorrow. There's actually, we've actually, during this time of COVID-19, and this is going to continue beyond COVID-19, partnered with all other organizations, domestic violence organizations in DeKalb. The Women's Resource Center, Caminar Latino, Tapestry, Raksha, some other organizations that really they work with specific populations as well, but certainly Women's Resource Center is well known. But I'm going to send you that so you can post that, because that is something that we post on our website, and we're attempting now to get that out to the community, to the schools, to know that these places are available, that they're still open, that they're taking calls, that they still have hotlines, that they're still doing things. Of course, the challenge has been adjusting everything for this COVID-19, adjusting everything and going virtual, and still letting people know that we do what we do. And I thank you for coming on the huddle. That's why Men Stopping Violence started the huddle, because we knew these things were happening with COVID-19 and men being at home. And I want to say this. I want to say this before we go. We believe men can change. We believe men can change. We also believe that they must be held accountable, and then through our program, then they can hold other men accountable. We need men. We need men to do this, and so our huddle was just for that purpose. And so we do that 2 times a week, Wednesday evening and Friday afternoon. But that was the purpose of it. Men to come together, support each other.
How can people tap into the huddle? What's their email
They can
link?
tap into the huddle. They can go to menstopandviolence.org and
Mm-hmm.
scroll right down to where it says the huddle. We have 2 links. There's one for Wednesday, 6:30 to 7:30. There's another link for Friday, noon to 1, 12 to 1. All they have to do is hit that link and be directed right into the Zoom chat. And they don't have to come prepared. All they have to do is come
Yeah,
there and be ready to come
I
there and
loved
sit
it.
in space where
I was on it, and I felt like we had a good time. It was
yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
I really enjoyed it. It was like I knew y'all, and we never met before. We don't
Exactly.
know, but it was like we've been
Yeah,
hanging for a long time. So I advise anybody who
exactly.
it's a great support group, a great shoot the breeze, a connection point.
Yeah.
Give us your phone number as well and your email address if people want to reach out to you.
Sure. People want to reach out to me, they can dial the office at 404-270-9894. 404-270-9894. I can be reached at Spencer@menstopandviolence.org. Spencer at menstopandviolence.org. And we're available. We're taking calls from not just from men referred. Listen, I'm taking calls now from a guy the other day that called Commissioner. He said, "Hey, I need some help." That's all he said. And we sat on the phone and talked for about 30 minutes about relationships and things. And then I directed him to some other resources he could find, the website and articles, the huddle. But that's what it's about. You
Yes.
know, and he called. I talked to him about his relationship, and then we talked about things that could be, that he could be dealing with. That he needed to just when he got off the phone, he's fine. So we do that as well, and so do these other organizations I mentioned.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I want to tell our Touchpoint crowd family that you heard a great presentation tonight from Mr. Spencer, who's the coordinator at Men Stopping Violence. It's a great program. And he told you and he highlighted some of the things that they do. But if you want to get more in depth, you can give them a call, go to the website. But the goal of Touchpoint is for us to connect and educate, to empower, to inform, to really make a difference in the lives of individuals in our district and also the county, the state, and the nation. So please take advantage of these resources and understand that you're not alone. If you need help, and we're going to share the resource guide that Mr. Spencer is going to give to us. That'll be part of the rebroadcast that you all can see. But we're sorry for the technical difficulties about what's going on live, but please, you all, send this out, share it, make sure people understand that we have resources available. We will be back on June 2nd. We're having a very, very special presentation. I get a chance to interview the HOA presidents and their cabinet. It's always the other way around where I sit on the hot seat or sit at the meeting and I answer the question, but you're going to get a chance to hear from leaders in our community on how they are coping with sheltering in place, COVID, some of their innovative strategies on how they've had to readjust their community meetings. But please, please, please be with us on June 2nd. We're going to talk to HOAs, a few, and their cabinet members, so we can continue to be engaged and be involved at the very grassroots level to make sure that you stay informed. So take it easy, everyone. Mr. Spencer, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you for keeping us connected. Thank you for saying that a man can change and they can make a difference in our community. Thank you to Men Stopping Violence for what you're doing. Thank you to Judge Burl Anderson of the Magistrate Court, terrific leader, a person who has standards, who wants to see the DeKalb whole. And I appreciate that's how I made the connection. And also to your chair, Dr. Reese, who's doing a great job in making things happen as well. So God bless you all. Be safe for the Memorial Day weekend. Stay strong. Thank you, District 3 staff, Sean, Brandon, LaShawn. We made it through the broadcast. We didn't blink. We kept moving forward, and I could not do it without y'all. See you later. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.